All right, so we're diving into a second act today. You know this book with all the stories about people who died
And came back.
and came back, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not exactly light reading.
No, not exactly a light beach read.
Right. But it does make you think about, what really matters
It really does.
in life.
It does.
And I thought it was really interesting how the author starts the book with a funeral
On his birthday.
on his own birthday. Like,
Huh.
talk about a wake-up call.
I know, that's what I thought. I was like,
Oh.
wow, okay, I see what you're doing here.
I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to pay attention now.
Yeah.
So each story is so different.
Mhm.
I mean, like Ed,
Yeah.
the guy who survives the lightning strike.
Yeah. When his best friend doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
Heartbreaking.
heartbreaking. And he talks about survivor's guilt and, like, everyone's judging him.
Oh, that spotlight effect.
The spotlight effect.
Yeah. We've all felt that to some degree, but can you imagine with something like that?
Oh, my.
Gosh.
I know.
And the book talks about the psychology behind it, like why we think people are always noticing us.
And it's so true, though. I mean, so often you realize they're not.
They're not at all.
At all.
So it's kind of freeing in a way when you realize.
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
And then, with Ed, too, it was just so interesting how he had to, like, deal with those emotions instead of just, bottling them up.
Yeah, and that can actually be harmful.
Right.
Yeah, that keeping it all in. Like, you gotta let it out.
I got to process it.
Yeah.
And then there's Luca, the pharmacist, who almost died from COVID.
Oh, yeah. COVID really changed everything, even how doctors communicate.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, they started writing notes differently, like with more compassion,
Right.
less technical,
More story-driven,
Yeah.
like, to make sense of it all.
Right. Exactly.
I think they needed that.
I think so, too.
And for Luca, it also shows how important connection is,
Even when you're isolated.
even in isolation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, the book even mentions crying as being therapeutic.
Oh, yeah. There's research on that. Crying can actually release stress hormones.
Oh, wow. It's like a physical release.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Maybe we should all cry a little more often.
Right. Maybe we should. Then there's Cody, who had everything. Money, success, you name it.
He's miserable.
Miserable, totally empty. It's like it's all an illusion.
It is. Like, what we think success is isn't always, true success.
Yeah. It's like external validation isn't enough.
It's not.
Yeah.
What's fascinating is how he finds meaning coaching a basketball team for recovering addicts.
Right. Like, who would have thought?
And it wasn't about accolades or anything like that.
It was about purpose. Something bigger than himself.
And helping others.
Yeah. Giving back.
Makes a big difference.
And then there's Summer. She's amazing. Survives a suicide attempt and ends up helping others with mental health.
That's powerful. And I thought it was interesting how the book talked about trauma recovery.
Oh, yeah, like EMDR therapy.
Mm.
And even playing Tetris.
Right. EMDR is becoming more common for treating PTSD.
I don't know much about it.
Yeah.
Is it like where you move your eyes back and forth?
Yeah, and you recall traumatic memories while doing that.
And somehow that helps. It seems counterintuitive.
It's wild, right? But the brain's a mysterious thing. It seems like doing that in a safe space can lessen the intensity.
Huh. And Tetris.
Yeah, apparently doing something visually demanding can actually disrupt traumatic memories forming.
So, like, it stops them from getting ingrained.
It's pretty wild.
I know. And with Summer, it also just shows how much it means to be there for someone.
Even without trying to fix things.
Just listening.
Just listening.
Yeah. Now, there's Mike, the guy who almost drowns while fishing.
Oh, right. Saved by a group of total strangers.
Total strangers.
Yeah. It's like how we're all connected in ways we don't even realize.
Yeah. The book uses the example of building a toaster
Oh, yeah.
to show how much we rely on each other.
Even for something so simple.
Right. It takes so many people with different skills
So many.
to make it happen.
It's a good reminder that we need each other.
We do. And like in Mike's case, those connections can literally save a life.
And the book even talks about the history of CPR, how something so simple can make such a difference.
Amazing. And then there's Jen.
Oh, Jen. Battling a heart condition while grieving for her mom who died from the same thing.
It's incredible how resilient she is.
She really is. Adapting, finding joy in the midst of it all.
And she leans on her support system.
Which is so important. The book talks about her playing a Mozart concerto, and there was a mix-up.
Wait, what do you mean?
She ended up playing a totally different piece than the one she prepared.
Oh, no. That's like a musician's worst nightmare.
You'd think. But she just rolled with it.
Oh, wow.
Improvised, drew on her skills, and created something beautiful.
That's amazing. Shows you how powerful it can be to just adapt.
Right. Sometimes things don't go as planned.
And that's okay.
Yeah. And then we have Kai, The doctor who pushes himself to the limit until he has a cardiac arrest.
Talk about a wake-up call. His story shows just how intense working in healthcare can be.
Especially in intensive care. The book calls it permacrisis.
Permacrisis.
Yeah, that constant state of urgency and pressure.
I can see why they call it that.
It makes you wonder how they cope.
Yeah. So what happens with Kai?
Well, he ends up reevaluating his priorities. He realizes his well-being matters too, steps back from the demanding job. The book talks about the idea of knowing when to quit.
It's a good lesson. Sometimes you need to prioritize yourself.
You do, and it's not selfish.
Not at all.
All right, now let's talk about Reese, the rugby player who has a series of heart attacks and ends up with an artificial heart.
Oh, wow. His story really made me think about identity and how it can change
Yeah.
after something like that.
Yeah, he goes through a lot. Addiction, self-destructive behavior. It shows how deep trauma can go.
Yeah, it does. But it's also about self-forgiveness.
It is. And the book talks about evolving selves. Like, we're not stuck in the past.
Right. We can change and grow.
It's never too late.
That's a good message. Okay, before we move on, we have to talk about Roberto.
Oh, Roberto, the mountain climber.
The one who survives a crazy long cardiac arrest after freezing in the Alps. That whole thing blew my mind. Like, how does someone even survive that?
I know, right? It really shows how resilient the human body can be.
And it was the cold that helped him.
It did. It protected his brain. The book talks about how hypothermia can be dangerous, but in some cases it can actually be beneficial.
So weird. And what I thought was interesting is how he couldn't remember his climb until he saw old photos.
Yeah, those photos triggered a flood of memories.
It's like they unlocked something in his brain.
It's amazing how powerful visual cues can be.
Right. We've all felt that looking at old photos or videos. Like being transported back in time.
Exactly. And for Roberto, it's like those photos helped him reclaim his identity.
Yeah, they helped him heal.
Yeah, and it all goes back to the book's main theme, the importance of our second acts.
Right. Those chances we get to grow and change after facing tough times.
And it doesn't have to be a near-death experience. It can be anything that pushes us to evolve.
So true. And speaking of second acts, we haven't even talked about the author's own experience, his living funeral.
Oh, right. That was wild, deciding to have a farewell party while he's still alive.
Like, talk about confronting your own mortality.
It's definitely different.
But it makes sense. It's about appreciating life and the people in it.
Absolutely. And it got him thinking about what truly matters.
Like a chance to reflect and make changes while he still can.
Yeah, and it really shows the power of community and expressing gratitude.
So it's not about dwelling on death.
It's about using that awareness to live more intentionally.
To make the most of the time we have.
Exactly. And I think that's a great place to start for part 2 of our deep dive into a second act.
I agree. There's so much more to unpack.
So we talked about all these crazy stories from a second act, right?
Yeah. About survival and resilience and like finding meaning even when facing death.
And it's crazy how each story is so different.
Right.
But they all touch on the same themes.
Yeah, like things we can all relate to.
Like that self-forgiveness thing.
Oh, yeah.
Rhys, the rugby player,
Oh, yeah, with the artificial heart.
really struggled with that.
He did. Even after the surgery, he was still dealing with addiction and stuff.
Yeah, he was really hard on himself.
It's sad, but it shows how hard it is to get past trauma.
It's not easy to just forgive yourself.
No, it's not.
And that's where that idea of evolving selves comes in.
Oh, yeah, from the book.
Yeah, like we're not defined by our past mistakes.
It's like a constant process of becoming right.
Exactly. We're always changing, growing.
It gives me hope.
Me too. It's never too late to change.
And to become who we want to be.
Right. And part of that is facing our past.
Yeah. Learning from those tough times.
And making them part of who we are.
It's like those experiences shape us, even the bad ones.
They do. They become part of our story.
And speaking of stories, Jen's really shows that resilience.
She does. Dealing with her heart condition and still finding joy.
Even with everything she's going through.
It makes you wonder how much of our happiness comes from within.
Versus like outside circumstances.
Right. Like, do our situations control us, or do we control how we feel?
The book actually talks about that.
It does.
Yeah. They did a study with lottery winners and accident victims.
What did they find?
Well, over time, both groups ended up back at their normal level of happiness.
So, like, winning the lottery doesn't make you happy forever.
And a terrible accident doesn't mean you'll be sad forever.
So it's like we have a baseline.
Yeah. And what matters is how we adapt.
Like how we deal with things.
Exactly. And how we choose to see the world.
Like Jen with her music.
Yeah. She didn't let her condition stop her from enjoying it.
And she found ways to cope and even thrive.
It's inspiring.
It is.
And another thing that kept coming up was the importance of connection.
Oh, yeah. Human
Like
connection.
having people you can rely on.
Community.
It came up in almost every story.
Like being rescued by those strangers.
Yeah. And Summer and Jen having support systems.
It's like those bonds literally save us.
Not just physically, but emotionally, too.
It's so true. And the book even talks about how those connections change our brains.
Really?
Yeah, like they rewire us to expect those relationships.
Like we're meant to be connected.
We are. And that makes that whole living funeral thing even more meaningful.
Oh, yeah. The author throwing a party for himself before he dies.
It's definitely out there, but it's about celebrating life.
And appreciating the people you love.
Right. It's like saying, hey, these people are important.
And it makes you think about your own relationships.
It does. Like, are we nurturing them? Spending time with the people who matter?
Because you never know when things might change.
You don't. Life is unpredictable.
It is. So maybe it's about living in the moment.
Being present.
And cherishing the people we have.
And speaking of cherishing, we talked about finding meaning and purpose.
Yeah, like with Cody. Coaching basketball.
And Summer helping people with mental health.
They found something that mattered to them.
Something bigger than themselves.
It's like true happiness isn't just about achievements or money.
It's about doing something you believe in.
Something that makes a difference.
Even small things can have an impact.
Yeah. And it's a journey, right?
It is. It's about finding your own path.
Figuring out what you're passionate about.
And where you can contribute.
It's exciting to think about.
It is. And another thing that came up was embracing imperfection.
Oh, yeah.
Letting go of that need to be perfect.
Like Jen playing the wrong Mozart concerto.
Exactly. She could freaked out.
But she didn't.
She just went with it.
And made something even more beautiful.
Right. It's about realizing that mistakes are okay.
And that we don't have to be perfect.
We don't. And sometimes quitting can be the best thing.
Oh, yeah. Kai, the doctor, pushing himself until he had a heart attack.
Yeah. He had to learn that lesson the hard way.
It's like a reminder to set boundaries.
And take care of ourselves.
Because our well-being matters.
It does. And
Yeah.
sometimes quitting can be the bravest thing.
To walk away from something that's hurting you,
It's not giving up.
it's choosing yourself.
It is. Okay, let's go back to Roberto for a sec.
The mountain climber.
Yeah. His story was mind-blowing.
It was. And not just surviving that crazy cardiac arrest.
But how he couldn't remember any of it.
Until he saw those photos.
It's wild, right?
It is. Like, those pictures unlocked his memories.
It makes you wonder about the power of visuals.
Yeah, like how they can trigger things in our brains.
We've all felt it. Looking at old pictures and suddenly you're back there.
Feeling all those emotions again.
And for Roberto, it was like those photos helped him heal.
They filled in the missing pieces.
It's like our memories make up who we are.
They tell our story.
Exactly. And all this goes back to second acts. Like we're
Right.
always evolving, changing.
And it's not just about surviving tough times.
It's about using those experiences to become better.
And to learn and grow.
And it's not about waiting for some big event to happen.
It's happening every day.
In those small moments.
The choices we make.
And the way we see the world.
We all have the power to change.
We do. And that brings us back to the author's living funeral.
Right. Throwing a party for himself while he's still alive.
It's about confronting death, but also celebrating life.
It really makes you think.
It does. About what's important.
And how we want to be remembered.
And how we want to live.
Yeah, it's about making the most of the time we have.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really makes you think about how we could all, kind of approach life differently.
Right. Like, we don't need to wait for something drastic to happen to, start living better.
Exactly. What if we all, embrace this whole second act thing?
Like, not literally dying and coming back.
No.
But just, those everyday chances to grow and change.
Yeah. Like, how can we live more authentically, more purposefully?
That's a good question. What do you think? Where do we even start?
Well, I don't know. Maybe just, being more present,
Like actually paying attention.
Yeah. Putting down our phones and really being there with people.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one. It's so easy to get distracted.
It is. We're constantly bombarded with stuff.
Yeah. And then we miss out on real connections.
Exactly. And maybe we could think about what Cody did.
Finding that thing that gave him purpose.
Right. Like coaching that basketball team.
It doesn't have to be sports or anything, but finding your passion.
Yeah. And how you can contribute to something bigger than yourself.
Yeah, that makes a difference.
And remember, summer.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just about being there for someone.
Listening without judgment.
Exactly. You don't always have to fix things.
Sometimes just listening is enough.
It is. It really is.
It's about recognizing that we're all in this together, right?
We are.
And that we can all make a difference.
Even small things.
like those strangers who saved Mike.
Oh, yeah. That story was powerful.
It was. It shows how interconnected we are.
And that we all have the ability to help.
To be that person who makes a difference.
Yes. Like you never know when you might be the one who needs help.
Or the one who can offer it.
Exactly.
You know, there's that quote from the book, life is best understood backward but lived forward.
Oh, yeah, I like that one.
It makes you think about how our experiences shape us.
The good and the bad.
Yeah, and how looking back can help us move forward.
It can help us make sense of things.
And maybe even change things.
Right, like that whole living funeral idea.
Yeah, not literally, of course.
No.
But taking that time to reflect on your life.
To see what's important.
And make adjustments while you still can.
Yeah, because life is unpredictable.
It really is.
So it's about being present, appreciating what we have.
And making the most of it.
Exactly.
Well, I don't know about you, but this book has definitely given me a lot to think about.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's really made me want to, reevaluate some things.
Yeah. And to, be more intentional about how I'm living.
I think that's something we can all take away from a second act.
It's like a reminder that we all have the power to create our own second acts.
And to make them amazing.
So what do you say we wrap up this deep dive with that thought?
Sounds good to me. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into fascinating topics.
And let us know what resonated with you from a second act. What are your takeaways?
We'd love to hear your thoughts.